intervene and stop the trafficking of specifically women. But I know men are also
yeah, absolutely.
also
men
trafficked.
are equally vulnerable.
So ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
And because we don't have much time to look into the details, let's go straight to this program. And I will begin with you, Mama. So I will call you Mama because that is the respective name we can have to an African lady.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
How is this? Because normally here in Africa, we're talking about Uganda today, that a person would wish to go out there, and when they hear of these promises of good jobs out there, every young woman would wish to join that class. But eventually, what comes out, what we are now learning, is that not sometimes it's not as rosy as it happens. Let's begin with your organization. What does it do exactly?
Yeah. We work in India. We work on all aspects of human trafficking because India has 18.3 million trafficked, and like you rightly said, we are not exclusively for women. We also work on labor trafficking. We also deal with child trafficking. So children are equally vulnerable like women, and so are men in labor exploitation. While we started off in 2019 on prevention and rescues, in 2022 we had this very unique opportunity of repatriating international survivors or victims from Uzbekistan, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Cameroon and other countries. So it was very intriguing for us to see what are these factors, who are these women, why are they here and all of that. But as we speak on today, we have repatriated around 61 survivors back to these countries.
Especially from Africa.
Especially from Africa, yeah.
How do these women end up in all those countries, especially from Africa? How do they end up specifically in India?
Like you rightly said, these are young mothers, teenage mothers, school dropouts, looking for opportunities on the streets or while they're at the workplace, like a salon or a kitchen or a bar. And then some guy or some woman approaches them, hey, why are you struggling? While you can go to India and find a better job, while you can go to India and earn $1,000 per month. And these women are so lit up with this very fantasy of India, because Uganda especially is so prone to India because of the Indian community here, because of the Indian movies, and then talking about financial benefit of earning $1,000 a month, which is so huge when comparing to earnings here in Uganda. So that's something that is very interesting for them. And while they agree for a salon job, or they agree for a kitchen work, or they agree for a housemaid work, or any kind of other hotel industry works, but only and only after reaching there, they realize the truth that there are no jobs in India for any Africans, especially the unskilled work. We have plenty of unskilled workers in India. There's no job for unskilled
Exactly,
workers.
for the Indians themselves.
Yeah, exactly, right? India has an unemployment issue, right? So when these women land in India, they realize that there is no job for them. But the only and only way that they were recruited for was to exploit themselves or to offer their bodies as sex slaves.
Okay. So I'll take more time with you on that, because we want a viewer who is out there to know that this is what is happening in this time today.
Yeah.
And that is not only exclusive to India. There are many countries, even
Yes.
people here of the European, the American dream, and many other parts
Yes.
in the Arab world, where these, especially women, are recruited, where they are trafficked. But now, when they land in India, what happens?
When they land in India, the very first thing they meet, or the person that they meet, is the recruiter or the trafficker or the madam. She very nicely greets them, welcomes them, they're so happy about it. And the very first thing she tells them is, can I have your passport? Because you're in a foreign land, you don't know anybody, so I can keep it safely with me. So she takes over the passport, takes them on a nice taxi drive to the home where she lives in. And after a day or two, that's when she says, or when the lady asks, hey, what's the job like? Where do I go? When do I start? Because they're excited to start working in India, right?
Exactly.
And then that's when she's told, hey, you know what? For me to get you from Uganda to India, it costed me $2,000 or $4,000 or $6,000. Now it is you who has to pay me this dollars. First of all, she's very shocked because when at the time of recruitment, she's told that she's doing all of this process for you. But now she learns that she has to she owes her money. That's the first thing. And the second thing, she's like, okay, when do I start work? Like, you know what? The kind of work that you're recruited for, that's not there. But here is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to engage with men on WhatsApp, on social media apps, or in the bars or in the kitchens, and then engage, earn whatever you earn from them, and then you pay me my debt. So this is what they're revealed after landing in India in the first week of their time in India. These women are in utter shock. Some of them deny, and that's when the manhandling or threat by witchcraft, by various other superstitious beliefs are made. Then that's when some of the other men come in to beat them and to violate their own bodies, and that's how the whole process begins.
And in the process, I'm told some people die.
Absolutely.
And of course, once you die, no one knows where you are.
Yeah.
That's the end of you.
Yeah, and the consequence of it is also HIV or other kind of infections that these women get exposed to.
Yeah. Is that happening?
Yes, it is.
Ariel, what has been your experience in doing this, helping these women?
So I think, you know, what's disturbed me the most is how they are really given misinformation, sorry. So in terms of, say that they don't want to do the work, they're told like you can't run to the embassy, you don't have any documents. Most of the time, they actually think that the embassy will maybe put them in jail if they try to tell them what happened. So we see these victims completely brainwashed, and in that process, they don't try to get help for themselves. They don't, you know, in most of the cases, they don't run away. They end up having to do the work because, again, there's threat of witchcraft, being beat up, etc. And so, you know, many of them that we come across, they've been in India for years. They've been stranded there without a passport. I mean, how can one expect to, you know, live in today's age? You know, in today's India, most of the jobs, they will not give you a cash payment, right? They want your documents. Even to find a place to live, you have for them to survive. Yeah. And that's the very sad state in which we find these survivors.
Okay. Look, which, because as a parent, as a legal person, as an African, and when you hear these stories, definitely they are touching. Now, do we have legal instruments that can help these victims to access justice?
Yes, this is a very important topic, and it's unfortunate we may not have enough time to really make the viewers understand, because there are many potential victims and they are already victims.
Yeah.
Now, your question is about legal instruments or even procedures in place. They are there. But I'd just like to share with the viewers that we delve in the topic with the presumption that people know what trafficking is. We would have endeavored maybe to mention keywords to define it. Like it's a recruitment, transportation, transfer, and harboring or receipt of people through forced fraud or deception with the aim of exploiting them. Exactly. It is good to know this because there is also migrant workers, which is governed under the UN Convention on Migrant Workers. It is legitimate.
Actually, to add to your point, says when it comes to trafficking, this here says in the African Charter that unlawful act of transporting or coercing people in order to benefit from their work or service or forced labor, including sex exploitation.
Exactly. Why I thought it's good to bring this element of definition or clear understanding is because we have around the world a convention on migrant workers, which is legitimate. And the procedures, if you see the definition of trafficking, it is different.
Yes.
I also like to mention that trafficking, for example, in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, it takes people mainly to Western Europe and Arab world, of course, including Asia like India. Now, we could also note that even here, we have
Within.
trafficking. Doesn't mean it is not only outside.
Yeah.
So it is also within. Now, having known that, it is estimated that about 3.7 million Africans live in slavery or forced labor, which is taken as the expression of trafficking. And it is estimated that about $31 billion is got from this kind of illegal activities of trafficking alone. You can say it is huge income, but huge illegal income, with the disadvantages of loss of life and suffering and all this kind of thing. So there are many people, both here and outside, who are actually victims of trafficking. Some here, because of the psychological brainwashing that they have said, keep quiet. Or some even don't know, especially internally, that they have actually been trafficked and they're living under trafficking situation. And that is so bad. Now, the legal aspect you have asked as a history, did you know that the first legal instrument about trafficking in women actually started in Europe? Because in Europe, there was trafficking of women. The white ladies, like. If you look at the genesis, the development of the legal instrument like trafficking, it started with Europe. But little did we know that with the global village and the economic disparity, it was even going to come more in the global south than Europe. Europe kind of they fought it and they succeeded in it. So now, there are so many instruments, including state legislations. Many countries have enacted laws, including Uganda, anti-trafficking law, but also at the global level, there are conventions which prohibit that. And as I said, in the genesis 3 conventions has been passed, starting from the 1917, then one was passed during League of Nations. So the world is very aware about this, and there are always programmatic areas, like plan of actions, like Uganda plan of actions on trafficking, because it's not only enough to have the law, but to have the implementation of the law. So action plans are always put. Sometimes we don't see it, but it is there. And the acting ministries like Ministry of Internal Affairs, Police, and all this, and Judiciary, they're always there. So to me, for this session, it's important to know that there are so many people who are taken from ordinary place of abode illegally and taken to suffer. If you see outside there, the story is appalling. So it is good for our people to know this topic.
Exactly.
And that is why I was wondering, with the limit of time, how we tackle it. But I thought for now I can mention that.
This segment is going to continue for the next maybe 2 or 3 weeks, because there is a lot that is happening when it comes to trafficking. There are people who are being recruited as seeking jobs, like he said. There are those who are taken and abandoned there. We will be looking at case by case. We are specifically looking at India today.
Sorry, I forgot to say that in the trafficking procedures, the research proves that it's actually people known to the victims who do it. It is worth mentioning that, because it's also a precaution, that it is rare for strangers to come and traffic somebody. It is either relatives or friends or people who tend to be acquainted to you. So that is what research has proved, that victims fall victims to ideally people they know either to relatives or to friends or to people they have become acquainted to, and yet they're leading you to deep problems.
Now, when the Red Rope comes to this, how do you now make use of the existing laws? Because I'm sure different countries have different laws. And for you specifically in India, how do you now relate with the government and other agencies in having this, first of all, identifying them that
Yeah.
these are the victims, but also access created to their home countries.
Yeah, like Major rightly said, we follow the book of law of how the definition goes. So when somebody approaches us for help or support, we kind of verify, we kind of assess their condition, assess their story on how they have come, how they were recruited. He rightly said that it is the known people, it is within their acquaintance circle that most of these women are recruited. It's very, very minimal percentage that a stranger has walked into them and then offered a job, right? So that being said, you know, we assess based on their story, and then we verify their authenticity or the nationality with the embassies. So we work very closely with the Ugandan High Commission or the High Commissions from various countries, and we work closely with the FRRO who process their exit applications. So we kind of try verifying all their documents and assessing their, and then we also connect with partners that we have on board. Like for example, in Uganda, we have Willow International, we have the Salvation Army, we have Rahab. So there is also COPTIB, which is a coalition of all the NGO partners. We collaborate with them, discuss with them, and then try and assessing the authenticity of the person, and then cater help to them. But it's interesting that, you know, the root causes of all of these issues have been education. They don't transition from primary education to secondary education, or gaps in education system itself. The second is teen pregnancies. Most of them are teen pregnant mothers. They have minimum two children. And very interesting and appalling aspect to notice is that most of them do not have fathers. My question is, where are the fathers? Where are the men that has pregnated these women but do not really father the children, right? So those are some interesting aspects that we found. While you were talking about how do we work in India, because because when it comes to India, we have to go by the law of India. So we try and assess. It's interesting that most of the women that we've assisted, almost none of the police complaints were registered. Because the women directly told me, hey Chrysolite, I cannot go to a court in India. So they were very frightened, they were threatened by the police officers, in the sense that that's how the traffickers groom them. So they, at some point in time, they don't even want to trust the high commissions, because they said, you know what, high commissions also are our friends. So even if you go to the high commission, they will send you back to me, because you know, we are in good relationship with them. So trust is the most important aspect that is broken again and again and again. You know, we human beings are beings of emotions.
But could you also be looking at, specifically for India, do you see maybe there could be also some loopholes in the immigration of the immigration laws that will also facilitate the traffickers? To easily get people.
Yeah,
for Indian,
I strongly
feel
at the immigration, some of these can be identified. Say for example, a 19-year-old person comes to India on business. She doesn't have a house of her own. Where is she going? What kind of business is she coming to do? Somebody comes on tourist visa. We want to promote tourism. But can you tell me 5 tourism places that you're going? Can you tell me anything about India? So these are simple questions that can be asked at the immigration, so that, you know, somebody is able to identify whether she's a victim, how she's being groomed to answer these questions. You know, just the normal procedure, but a different approach to it. I think we definitely can identify and deport more 50% of these victims.
Okay.
While most of them are groomed, they know which counter to go at the immigration. They know what questions to ask. It's appalling that most of these women, their yellow fever card is not even processed by them. They don't even get a yellow fever vaccination. That is also faked. You know, so some of these documents can be verified, while some of the documents are very authentic and come from a authentic source. But however, I strongly feel, like you said, 50% of the people can be traced at the immigration itself.
Okay, so we generally, not specifically for
Yeah.
India, we may also think that there could be also some collaborators within the migration systems, so that will easily facilitate. Or if there are no collaborators, then the loopholes, the recruiters
Yes.
would use the loopholes that there exist in the
Yeah.
immigration systems. That again facilitate this trafficking of people. And I'll ask Ariel, because you are dealing mainly with the women. I know, of course, we'll also talk about how men are trafficked. But these traffickers, the recruiters, the majority of them are men or women? Now that we're talking about women who have been recruited.
Yeah, so mainly they are women from the country of origin of the victim. So as he rightly said that sometimes it's an acquaintance or somehow known to the victim, but someone posing as a woman who has done well in India, she comes back well clothed, and again we only see the outside, right? We don't understand what she has done to get to where she is, but telling stories about how you can make a great income. So oftentimes it's a brighter than possible picture that's presented to the victims, and maybe on the first or second day they are wined and dined, and only after that do they see a totally different face of the trafficker. In most of the cases they don't actually even see the trafficker after the initial visit, like the initial receiving. After that they're put into a completely confined, I would say box, because there's no windows, they don't know where they are. They might wait 1 or 2 days, and then some other agent of the trafficker tells them, oh, you owe us this debt and we need our payment like 20,000 a week. It's usually with a very quick repayment terms, which is honestly not possible with any other jobs than what they are told to do. It's not possible to make 20,000 in a week, for any Indian for that matter, right?
No, but before I go to look which with the legal aspect of it, who are buying these women finally when they are placed up for sale?
It's very interesting that you asked that question. I have to say that most of these women are recruited by Africans for Africans. With all due respects to India, Uganda especially, and most of these African countries have accepted Indians as their one, right? But if you notice, Indians have not accepted Africans as one.
Yeah.
So there is a higher discrimination in India when it comes to Africans. There are so many myths or hallucinations about Africans.
Yeah.
Having said that, so 90% of the buyers in India are Africans. It is appalling that the whole ecosystem is built around Africans, right from recruitment to agents to middlemen that process their documents, to traffickers, to buyers. All of them are Africans.
So the whole system is Africanized. It is Africans who are recruiting, Africans who are exploiting, Africans who are buying these sex workers in India.
Yeah, while in India, there could be middlemen that help with SIM card. Like I can get a SIM card for like $2, but for an African, it is almost like $150. A normal SIM card, phone SIM card. So like that, there could be men that help, Indian men that could help, but otherwise, mostly it is around Africans.
I think for the viewer out there, if I think I feel bad at that, but a viewer out there, we're discussing these things because we want you to know, as a family, as a parent, as a father, as a mother, even as a person, because any person can end up a victim.
Yes.
Now, how do you guard yourself when your child tells you, look, I have a job from some promise, I'm going to work in a hotel, I'm going to work in some place in Europe, in India, in China, where I think it's always very important now to verify that information.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And before I move again to him, this what I wanted to know. When you look, generally, when you look at these women, these young women, or these women generally, what is their background? Are they coming from some, I mean, how can, I know recruiters will pay for your ticket, for everything, for your passport, for even you don't need to have money to be able to pay.
Yeah.
But when you look at their background, where are they coming from? Are they coming from some good families? Are they coming from no family? Are they from the streets? For those you have helped at least.
Yeah. I could say they all come from a large family, siblings of more than 5, 4. That's primary. Secondary is a broken family system where there is no father for the child, where they themselves don't have a father figure in their own families, right? So instead of commenting on the economic status, I want to comment on the family system, right? You rightly said, you know, when I get a job, they don't tell anybody. They don't tell even their parents. I have interviewed women whose parents don't even know where this survivor is. They think she's somewhere else. They think she's somewhere in Uganda working. They don't even, I mean, verification. We are in an age of communication and technology. The same technology that recruiters are using to hire you or recruit you, you as a common man can use the same technology to verify if this information is authentic or not. Like I said, the root causes, we have to going back to the root causes. Not being unemployed, not educated, teen pregnancies, those are the root causes or the status from where the women come.
Okay. Look, Awich, do we see this ending?
Well, everything has a beginning and the end. We say that everything changes. The only thing that doesn't change is change
Itself.
It is only change which is a constant. So it is. It will end. Now, I want to say first of all, the assertion that Ugandan women are trafficking into India is true. I was in India like 3 months ago. I was invited by the ruling party of India, and I found this, the embassy, because the embassy hosted me into a dinner, and they were really grappling with it for those they had managed to get hold of. So I saw it with my own eyes. I was even surprised that these girls could reach there. So I just wanted to confirm that it's true because I was in India. So
that these women are trafficked by...
They are trafficked to
for
India.
Uganda case, the Ugandans themselves.
Of course, as I said, the people who take them are acquaintances.
Yes.
They are people who get to you. So it is Ugandans. Now, I also want to hint about the prevention, like you talk about you talk about the end of it. You see, when these international instruments, even African Charter on Trafficking, when states ratified, there's what they call the 3 Ps, which is so ingredient in that: prevention, protection, and prosecution. So states undertake as their obligation to prevent trafficking. And as I said, there's action plan for that, including attention to causes like teen pregnancies and awareness raising and all this. There's a multiplicity of activities for prevention. And then protection, also including awareness, telling parents and everybody, like what we are doing, this is part of protection, to make awareness in the public. But also prosecution, if they are caught, they should be prosecuted. So when these laws are even domesticated, the gist, the spirit of this law is based on those 3 Ps. And states take that obligation too. Now, the other thing I want to come back to is who buys. The question of who buys are in 2 stages. One, who buys to sell, and who buys to consume. The buying to sell can be intermediaries. It can even be a Ugandan taking and an Indian intermediary takes it. The consumption I am not sure about in India, but I know in Europe, for example, in countries where prostitution is legal, because not all countries have legal. In Netherlands, for example, and Switzerland, prostitution is legal. So if somebody smuggles that, he will do it. Italy, for example, and Sweden, prostitution is a crime. And for them, they criminalize the buyer, because the state of Sweden presumes that Sweden can provide everything. Now, if you get a lady in need, instead of exploiting, you take to a welfare officer. So for them, prostitution is not the seller, but the buyer. Now, one thing I've known for the consumption is that when it comes to sex, it is racial blind. So even the white would buy black, and I have seen it. Because why I've seen it in Switzerland is because the prostitutes work during the day, not at night. They come to office in the morning, and they leave at 6 in the evening. It is their work.
After their sales.
So you can even walk on the road and see a white man buying a black girl. So it seems like it is. So I don't know in strict society or closed society like India. So that's why I was saying at the buying are in two phases: buying to sell and buying to consume. So those are two levels. Now, the particular question you ask her about, again, if I may phrase, like, who actually does the activity of picking these children? It is well researched and found that, you know, ideally as crime, you would associate to men, because men are most risk takers. Men tend to want money more because they think they have the role to provide for the family. But far from it, trafficking research has proved that 50% of traffickers are women. It is the only crime which is very well shared democratically in the gender. Because ideally you would expect men to be more involved in crime. Why? Because they are more adventurous. They seem to think they have more duty of care to the family, so they need money. They are risk takers. But a research has been done in trafficking to find that it is shared equally in the gender. 50% of the traffickers are women, 50% are men. And therefore, what do we learn from this? It means, therefore, that in the area of prevention or protection, you have not to be gender blind. In other words, you don't take a lady who is coming to sweet talk you and think, this one is a woman after all, cannot lead me to problem. No, be careful. So I just wanted to share in that question that a research done proves that in trafficking, the perpetuators are equally shared in gender.
Yeah, you have also rightly talked about the prevention and protection, but the issue of prosecution, especially when you look at the African Court of Justice, I think in chapter 28, where the protocol on human and people's rights talked about criminalizing the trafficking and dealing in these resources. But the problem comes in enforcement, because how do you enforce? First of all, like Africa, we don't have the African police to enforce this, which means you have to use the respective countries to be able to address this issue. Well, the crimes are committed in countries, but don't you think maybe we needed some strong enforcement measure to address this? Now,
as I said earlier, states under these instruments, they are compelled to design action plans. In fact, when reporting to such instrument, for example, many instruments which have been ratified have reporting obligations. Not only do you ratify and drop it there, but there's a periodic time you have to report to show that you are complying. Now, under the reporting, there's a provision you have to show your action plan you have designed. Now, this action plan, therefore, as we had earlier on said, that trafficking is also in Uganda, not only taking people abroad. So this action plan should be detailed to show that even in Uganda, what are you doing? Exactly. What is your plan to do it? And that is when it calls for enforcement. Maybe at some appropriate time, we may have to look at a Ugandan action plan for prevention of trafficking, which I'm sure it is there.
Yeah, we have.
So we would have to look at that. That is now what we can see the enforcement procedures. And always when they make this to the reporting procedures, they are asked, because the expert where you're reporting have ability to see gaps, and they always said, no, you have, thank you so much for this action plan, but this action plan still has this gap, this gap, this gap. Can you please close it? It includes, for example, leave alone the domestication of the law for trafficking that you have to pass in your parliament. pass in your parliament action plan, but it includes, as I said, even training of officers.
Yes.
Or setting department, anti-trafficking department, who are well trained, and resourcing, giving them funds and resources that it needs for them to do it. Okay? You're talking of training, you're talking of resourcing this department, and awareness like we are doing it. This is part of it.
Sure.
So the enforceability is detailed, and that is why states are asked to provide action plan for the prevention of trafficking.
Yeah, yeah. In Uganda, I think that Act, Anti-Human Trafficking Act of 2019, which is in force. But okay, you said all those ones, training, facilitating to ensure that this happens. Because we have had cases, and one time we shall, now that we have opened this discussion, it's not stopping here, we'll also have to discuss with the Ugandan government what we have done and what we see happening. We have, like we speak today, Ugandans who are stuck in Myanmar. They cannot come out because they say war. Now recently there was also the earthquake. So all this compounded, how do we make sure that people who are found in this situation are safe? But also back to you.
Because many countries are sources of trafficking, but they are also
Destination.
the destination. So you find, and that's why countries have to look introspectively, not only from the point that we are the suppliers. One, you can be suppliers, but you are also receiving.
Receivers.
But also the internal one, say traffic from Arua to Kampala,
Yeah.
or traffic from Karamoja to
to
Mbarara.
Yes.
So there's also internal. And that's why there's a need for a clear, detailed action plan with enough training for actors and even resources provided too.
Now, back to you, as you do this as Red Rope, because that's the organization name, why do you call it the Red Rope? Because here we have saying that you give him the long rope, you got to commit yourself wherever you are.
Okay. Before I answer that question, I just want to add in what India does. India has good law, and accordingly, like he rightly advised, India also has anti-human trafficking units. Every district in every state of India is allocated an anti-human trafficking unit, which comprises one head constable, 2 police officers, and the superintendent of police. They all form a unit, and they are in charge of these 3 Ps, like he rightly mentioned, who also get trained on periodical basis. They have a fund that they can administer to for any of these rescues or any of these legal cases that they take up. So that's something that's already been instrumented. It started a few years back under the UN on a pilot branch, and now it's doing really well in India, which helps in identifying most of these victims and prosecuting the traffickers. Now, to your question about why Red Rope,
But anyway, most importantly, without even going to Red Rope, because of the time we have, do you have any challenges as doing that? Because there's a reason as to why some of these women refuse to go and report to police,
yes,
or to report to authorities, but also getting information to authorities can also be a challenge, because these people are kept in a prison kind of,
yeah,
with no access to a person from outside.
yes.
Then how does government support there?
Yeah, so some of the challenges that we face have been reporting, because it breaks my heart that as much as the cases of repatriation are increasing, which is good, the reporting is almost zero. So none of the government knows that, you know, the number of cases or number of women that are trafficked. It's a common assumption or a myth in India that these women come here by choice, which is something that I profoundly disagree. No woman wants to prostitute herself. No woman wants to sell her body. So this is something I'm convicted of. So that's a myth that we need to break in India as well. Well, that is one. The second challenge is, even if they report, the acceptance or the tenure of the prosecution or the tenure of conviction is too long, and hence they don't want to comply with that reporting mechanism. The third one is, even if they want to go home, like she said, there are women that are stuck in India for 10 years, and why do that happen? There are more push factors than pull factors. Hey, it's time you come home. Or you know, they have left 5 years back. What do they come back to? You know, do they come back to the same poverty, or where do they start from, right? There is no mechanism in the reintegration process that is enabling to restart their life. So that's another one. And the fourth one is overstay fine. India levies around $600 as an overstay fine. On top of it is your ticket. So these are financial constraints, social constraints, legal constraints that are pushing these women every day, even as a desire to go back home, to meet with their children, to hug their father. Some of them couldn't even bury their fathers. You know, yesterday we happened to meet with one of the survivors who is like, I'm still not convinced or accepted that my father has left me. And I was not here to bury him. I was not here to offer the last rites as a daughter. So it's a huge challenge for their acceptance or for their living as well.
Because we're running out of time, we would have been here to discuss this the whole day, because it affects every one of us and every part of society, and no one is immune, because it could be a family, it could be a relative, it could be a daughter, it could be anyone can end up a victim. But of course, subsequently we shall be discussing, even with people who have been the victims themselves, we'll be having them here to talk of their experience, how they ended up there, who are these recruiters, because they are among us, and we need to find out who these people are. But this is what we'll be looking at in the subsequent Fridays that will be coming. But as we wind up today, and look, Awichi, I think we'll have to your closing shot on this.
Not answered enough about, is it going to end?
Exactly.
It's going to end. As I said, that everything has a beginning and end. It is only change which doesn't change. For example, smoking. Who would believe that smoking would end? You know, smoke, everybody thought it was part of life. Until the science discovered it could give cancer, and then courts started, the people started suing and awarding $10 billion against company. Now the legislation has been tightening to a point that you don't advertise cigarettes, but you should advertise that it's dangerous. Not only are you not supposed to advertise, but you advertise. So how can you be selling a Coca-Cola and they said you indicate on that Coca-Cola that is dangerous? In fact, now UK is increasing every year. They said the smoking is increased, 19, 20, 22. Every year they pass a law increasing. Anyway, even slavery was here and it ended. Therefore, a mischief in society like trafficking, especially where the world has come together, because it is one unison voice against it. There's no part of the world which is saying, it's okay, you can traffic. At least there's unison voice that is a mischief, it's a crime, it is inhuman. The task now is how to do it, because it deals with organized crimes.
Yeah.
Remember, I told you that there's $31 billion on it. So how do you fight an organized crime which has money value is not easy. But the fact that the world is united, the fact that the world agreed is a mischief, it is a violation of fundamental human rights, it will end.
Thank you. Ariella, what's your closing shot on this? Because then we need to move.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when I first found out about trafficking and the fact that modern day slavery exists, I mean, that deeply, deeply disturbed me. You know, like he rightly pointed out that slavery ended, why not put an end to trafficking? So I believe that it will take involvement of every community, but we can put an end to this.
Yes.
Because as we've discovered today, you know, it's people from the same country trafficking people of the same country. And you know, with enough awareness, with enough prevention, I think we can start appealing to their conscience. We can start, you know, enforcing immigration laws and checks that are going to be done so that this does not continue.
And Namanda, that's the name I preferred. Now, do you follow up to find out when finally these ladies are settled, where they go, and what's your experience?
Yeah, So like I said, we've partnered with the Salvation Army, Willow International, Rehab, and other organizations within these countries like Uganda to ensure that reintegration and repatriation happens. Because the survivor, when she comes back, she's almost at zero level. So now it's important for government, for social organizations and families to come together to help support her. Because it's our vision that we just don't identify victims, and it doesn't end there. Victims have to transform into survivors, and survivors have to thrive as survivor champions. From the same community or from the same place that she's recruited, she has to go back there, have a voice for herself and for people around her. So that is our vision, and that's why partners like this come hand in hand in ensuring that these are reintegrated. For example, yesterday we did have a survivor meeting at Willow International, facilitated by the Salvation Army. We met almost 13 of survivors that we have repatriated.
In Uganda?
In Uganda.
You have about 13?
Yes.
Okay.
In Uganda, we have repatriated 38 survivors. 38, out of which we met 13 survivors. One of them is studying, she's studying law, and she's also working part-time. So I asked her, why did you pick up law? She's like, because I want to advocate for this. I want to advocate against this and fight all the cases. So that is one survivor. Another survivor, the very first survivor that we took, she was extremely sick, unable to move, unable to eat, unable to talk and all, in such utterly bad condition. But with the help of Willow, we were able to repatriate her, rehabilitate her and reintegrate her. Today, she started a small poultry rearing at her home. While she's still struggling to move, she's doing something of her own. This is how we want survivor champions to grow.
Exactly. And it will be good that you see them growing. But what have you had any experience? Maybe you have not been here for a short time. What would you wish that the government of Uganda should do if you have had experience with the government officials?
Yes. So my request and appeal to the government of India, the government of Uganda is, while you're doing great in ensuring that the law is strong and preventing it, may I request you to work more on the root causes, especially on education, especially on teen pregnancies. And can I request all, like she said, you know, it doesn't take the government alone. It takes the churches to come along. It takes the mosque to come along. It takes every one of us from the community to come along. You know, corporates have something called as corporate social responsibility. Today, my question to all the viewers is, can we have individual social responsibility? Because it starts from within. I am trying to recruit somebody for my own desire of earning more money. But if I say, okay, she is my fellow being, I cannot recruit her. She is my fellow sister, I cannot have sex with her. So if we can have that individual social responsibility, that's when, you know, like Major said, we can put an end to it.
Yeah, thank you so much, a viewer who has been with us for this enriching time. It is sometimes very hard to believe some of the things are happening, but here we are, and we now find out that a lot is happening around us. So families, please be on guard, be conscious, know who you are dealing with, who is dealing with your family. But unfortunately, we hear now some of these recruited may not be coming from working families. Some of them are collapsed families. So there is a lot that as community that we need to do to put this a stop. Next week we shall be continuing with this discussion, and we shall be bringing in more experts, including the victims. And one time we shall even have the recruiters to come here to tell us how they do their trade. But I thank you people, thank you Ndugawich and the ladies for this show, and I thank you the viewer has been out there and the team that has been behind this production. Until next week on Friday is when we shall meet again. Please have the best of the weekend and take care of yourselves, that you are not recruited. Thank you so much. Have a good day.